In motion is Sewell. Goff to throw. Wants to throw it to Sewell. He caught it! Boy, Sewell with a first down! Oh, yes! The big man dives down to the 31-yard line. Oh, that is beautiful!
Welcome to the Twentyman Huddle podcast. We are in the middle of training camp. I am joined by Detroit Lions veteran left tackle Taylor Decker. And Taylor, does training camp get easier now? This is what camp for you? Is this eight?
Yep.
Does it get easier? Does it get harder? Is it tougher on the body?
I mean, you definitely have more miles on the body. I mean, I would say, the staff is doing a good job of managing reps and managing workload, with some of the guys who got some more miles, got a lot more games played, game snaps and stuff like that. I mean, I will say the one spot that you do have an advantage as a veteran and somebody who's played is, the offensive system, and there isn't as much angst to go out there and perform every single day because you've done it and you're confident in it.
You can get yourself a day off here or there, or you just understand kind of what's going on that you don't feel like you have to be in there every single time. Is that kind of...
Well, when I'm practicing, I'm doing every rep. I'm just, you see the young players, they're trying to digest the playbook. They're trying to think on the fly.
Sure.
They can't process the information as fast. That doesn't mean they're not studying. But just from, a veteran player standpoint, I've seen every defense and all the blitzes and stuff like that. So I know what to expect. So I can just go out there and play a little more free and with a little, I guess the word would be less anxiety.
Sure.
The guys are thinking of what's going to happen and anxious. And
things aren't going 100 miles a minute like they are for younger guys. How's maybe Dan's camps a little bit different than some of the other kind of regimes you've been a part of here? Is it easier? Is it more intense? Is it kind of the same? Are they all pretty much the same? Or maybe how would you describe it as maybe being a little bit different if it is?
I would say the camps over the last couple of years, they kind of ebb and flow. There'll be days where, he always uses the term, we're going to redline you, like we're going today.
Yeah.
And I just want you guys to go. Don't think about it. Don't look towards the next day. And he always, is saying that we will take care of you because we have a plan to make sure you're feeling good. But we need those days where, maybe you're going to get 40 reps and it's going to be full pads and we need that out of you.
Yeah.
Because, come game time, you're playing 60, 70 reps full speed every single week. So I think the word to describe it that it's built off of would just be the trust.
Yeah.
Just trust that we have a plan and we are going to make sure that you guys are feeling good, come time for the season.
And that's coming from a guy who's been in your shoes too, so maybe that's a little bit different, a little different perspective from a coach that actually played a long time and played such a demanding position that he did. Taylor, you've talked about this a little bit, expectations. Obviously you've been a part of some lean years here, but the expectations are much bigger heading into this season. How much fun is that for you as a veteran player going into your 8th season now to talk about being right there in the NFC North, to talk about being one of the dangerous teams in the NFC, to talk about maybe a floor being, just making the playoffs? Those expectations haven't been around here consistently. How fun is that to enter a year with that kind of buildup? Because you guys in the locker room probably feel the same way. I know you guys are head down. You've got some work to do. We haven't done anything yet.
Yes.
But you got to hear the expectations, right? And it's got to be fun, isn't it?
Yeah, I would say like in a vacuum, without all the other variables that comes with, being a player, like that excitement is fun.
Yeah.
It's fun to have those expectations, but, we have to prove what we are, and it's going to come down to that. And I feel like I've been like craving this sort of potential.
Yeah, I bet.
I've said for probably 3-4 years that, I just want to play a home playoff game.
Yeah.
Everybody else has, in the media has much more lofty expectations and, expectations. And I just want to start there.
Can you imagine
I just want to start and trying to,
like?
I just want to start by trying to win the division. And, I'm not going to sit here and, pound the table and say like it's going to happen. That's where I want to start.
Yeah.
I want to start there and maybe our goals and what we want to do will evolve as we go. But man, Ford Field, if we got a home playoff game.
Can you even imagine, Taylor?
Be incredible.
What that would be like.
Yeah.
That would be so fun.
It would be like one of those Taylor Swift concerts where they're talking about the seismic earthquake and all that. Yeah.
It would, because those people are so hungry for it too, and they would show up in force, and that would be such an advantage. Well, let me ask you this then. Looking at the roster, looking at some of the young guys, looking at it now. Look, it's 10 days into camp, right? You've got a long ways to go, but do you like the pieces that you have? Do you think you've improved this roster enough where you can compete for some of the goals that you're talking about?
I think so. But again, that's all theory. And again, we have to prove it and all the blah, 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 player speak, coach speak. But that's true. That's the true nature of it. One guy that, I'm just excited to play with him is David Montgomery. His intensity and his passion and his competitiveness just pops. Like I feel it. I feel it out there. And I've, not me personally, but us as a team, we've played against that guy for a number of years. And,
right.
I'm super excited to play with him. And then just to see our young guys as a whole, whether they're rookies, second-year players, the overall professionalism and maturity, I think has been pretty impressive because it can be a hard transition as a young player. You're the superstar at the college. You come here and you just feel like you're trying to tread water to be a professional and to be mature. I think that's a testament to those guys and what they're about.
I want to ask you, the David Montgomery stuff is great because you look at the film and his ability to make that first guy miss. And then you've got a guy like Gibbs with his 4.3 speed and stuff, with how good you guys are up front. It seems like with that combination, and this is just my perspective from the outside looking in, you would know more. It seems like the big play potential in the run game is much greater with those two guys. And I think we've even seen it in the 10 days, their ability to make a guy miss cutback. Is that kind of maybe the one thing that David and Jameer bring? And look, DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams were terrific last year, over 1,800 yards and 23 touchdowns. And those guys were great and they did their job. But with these two, it maybe looks like the big play potential in the run game is a little bit more. Would that be accurate?
I think if we are able to like run wide zone effectively and get really good at it, especially up front, I feel like that's a scheme where it just takes repetition over repetition. You see the teams that are really good at running wide zone, and they just end up developing a feel for that. And I feel like that's where a lot of the big plays come. Yeah. And we need chunks in the run game. Like we have to have it because that just opens up everything. That opens up the playbook for our quarterback and receivers and our offensive coordinators. So I do like the blend of talent and ability that we have in our running back room.
In that offensive line room, Graham Glasgow rejoins the team. You have a big smile on your face. I know why, but you get Big V back too. And I think that's a big one too, right, Taylor? That's a guy who lightens up that room too. Two questions. How fun is it to have kind of that whole group back together again? You guys haven't played with your top 5 in 2 years, and even with how good you guys have been. And then just maybe Hank and his ability to kind of make that whole room work. You look at guys like Matt Nelson, Evan Brown, who stepped in and played really well. It seems like his ability to build depth is great. So getting Graham, Big V back, just how much fun do you guys have in that room? Yeah. And then just how maybe Frank ties it all together and keeps everybody kind of on track, but having fun too, because it seems like a fun room to be a part of.
I would say, first I would say, like, if you've been the guy that's been out and been hurt, like, how much that sucks, and you almost feel secluded and like you're not as much of a part of it.
You went through it a couple of years ago.
I've done it, a couple times. So I know I'm just happy for those guys to be back in the room. Yeah. Because I know what that camaraderie does for you and your mindset. But yeah, just having everybody out there and having a full unit out there being able to practice, like, this is a very high performance business, but man, we make it fun. We make it so much fun. Yeah. We're always cracking jokes, but we're still going to go out there and have our expectations to perform. So, it's just a fun group, man. I think Hank's done a good job. Sorry.
No, you're good.
I think Hank's done a really good job of kind of, encouraging kind of a family atmosphere in there and to support one another and he supports us. And, you know, if he has to get on us a little bit, he will. But we know it's coming from a place of love.
How much pride do you have when people talk about the Detroit Lions? The first thing they talk about, the strength of this football team, is the offensive line that you're a huge part of, that you're the anchor of on the left side.
I mean, it's cool. It's super cool. Like, you know, I've played a ton of football, but it's cool to be a part of a unit that has the potential to be a difference maker.
Yeah.
And I feel like the organization has been building towards that for a long time. And, you know, to see us be able to go out there and perform and you know, hopefully perform even better this coming year. You know, I know I'm a grown man and everything, but it's fun.
I can imagine. Fun. Yes.
So.
All right, I want to finish with this, a little word association kind of. I'm going to say a name of the guys that you face every day along that defensive line, and I want the first word that comes to mind when I say a guy. That's the one we go with. Got the rules?
Yeah, I think
Can't
so.
think of it ahead of time. Here we go.
I think so.
All right, let's first start with Aiden Hutchinson.
Relentless.
I like it.
Yeah,
he is.
Do you want me to riff on that or explain it?
Yeah, we can riff on it. Let's do it.
Well, one thing I would say about Aiden is he's definitely added some muscle. He's bigger.
Yeah.
And we can feel it with his power in the rush in the pass rush. And man, he's what you want in your first round pick. He really is.
Yeah.
And
seems like it's all about ball too.
Yeah. I mean, that he does it right. And I will give him his kudos for that. And he was running the conditioning test and I was like, did you gain any weight? You look bigger. And he said he did. So, you know, he obviously got some good off-season work. And
that's what he said this offseason. One of his goals was, going from your first year to second year, that second year, that second off-season, I mean, you're not training for the 40 and the bench and the combine and all that stuff. You can actually look at tape and see where your deficiencies are, game-wise, body-wise.
Yeah.
And you can spend that whole off-season focusing on it. He said, that's what I did. I needed to get bigger and stronger. And kudos to him. It sounds like he's done that.
Yeah.
Charles Harris.
I could probably use the same word. I would say he is probably the most consistent effort guy.
Yeah.
I take the majority of my snaps against him.
Yes, you do.
And it doesn't matter if it is a walkthrough, shells like today, full pads. He is always trying to work something within the framework of the practice.
Yeah.
But I know I'm not going to get a playoff against him. And, man, those guys are a handful to deal with because it's run game, pass game, everything. Like,
you've got these people pretty excited now. We're only 2 in.
Yeah. I'm excited. I'm excited to be able to compete against those guys because I know they're going to make me better.
Yeah.
You know, I know
that's all you can ask for, right?
You know, there's days early in camp where Charles was testing power on me. And today all of a sudden he's working hand moves up the field. And I'm like, all right, I see what you're doing. It's a chess match, and you know we're about the same age, and just going back and forth every single day. It's good for me.
Guy with a chip on his shoulder too. Went down last year. You know what I'm saying? Not being able to play, the injury, having to fight through that, the off season, coming back, and strikes me as a guy who's ready.
I don't know if our media staff would want me to say this, but I thought early in camp last year, I thought he was our best defensive player.
Yeah.
You know, maybe I'm biased because I was going against him, but man, he was on it, and it seems like he's kind of picked up where he left off. And I think we got a lot of playmakers on defense.
People can't forget we're only 2 years away from him having a 7.5 sack season. You know, that's production in this league,
and a little bit more limited snaps that year too.
100%. John Kaminsky, let's go Kaminsky.
Ooh, tone setter.
Tone setter.
I see him as a tone setter, and. You know, these first three guys, they're in the framework of they're going to go every single play. And I feel like he's going to bring that physicality every single play where maybe he's not necessarily making the play, but he's setting other guys up to, and he's happy to do it.
100%.
Yeah, he feels like that unique position perfectly.
Glue. He's a glue guy.
Yeah.
That's what I think of him. Yes. Every roster needs a guy like John Kaminsky. Makes everyone around him better.
A couple years ago, he was on the Atlanta Falcons, and he didn't end up playing. But we were trying to game plan some stuff for him. Yeah, he's a good player.
Josh Paschal.
Power.
Yes,
he's a powerful guy. You just see his lower body, and you know just the way he's built. He's a powerful guy. Similar. I feel like he's in a similar vein is Kaminsky.
Yeah.
Is that role
kind of
that
player.
he fills. You know, kind of a guy who's, you know, 3-4 DN, but, you know, and a nickel, if you need him to slide off the D end, he can. You know, if you need him to slide inside, maybe undersized 3 technique to pass rush. But he is a powerful guy.
Really good to sets a good edge against the run.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that kind of stuff with the strength. James Houston.
Smooth.
Smooth.
He's smooth.
He is smooth, isn't he?
Yeah, he is a smooth player, and you know, he's just got the rare, unique gift of just natural bend.
Yeah.
I feel like that's just something that you have or you don't, and you can't really teach it. You know, if you have it, you can build upon it, but you know, not many guys can dip the corner or have the ankle mobility and can dip their hips and maintain balance.
And speed.
Yeah. He's smooth with all of his stuff.
Romeo.
I see him as like that consummate professional guy.
Yeah.
I mean, he's had injuries, and you know, we picked him up off
Giants
of waivers from the Giants, and I remember he was starting when he first got on our practice squad. He was going against us on defense, and it was just like every day I'm like, oh my god, this guy's a headache, because he would do the right thing all the time with good technique. And you know, I've seen it over the last year coming back from his injury. Like, he's always doing something to be able to come back from that.
His brother Julian.
Yeah. Especially in games, I feel like I see violence out of his hands. You'll see sometimes he'll come downhill on a guard and he'll just strike him with his hands, and he's popping people. I feel like he's started to add more to his rush repertoire, and he's been a guy that he's had some injury stuff here and there, which I hope we can keep him healthy.
That's the big thing with him.
Yeah,
it's just staying on the field.
Yeah.
One guy that I know you don't go against, but I'm just curious because he's kind of moving himself into first team reps. There's kind of a little build up for him a little bit. Just Broderick Martin, the rookie. Obviously, you can't teach 6'5", 330 pounds. But what have you seen from him? I know you don't go against him directly because you're out on the edge. But maybe what you've seen from tape, what you've seen Frank and Jonah have to deal with him.
Yeah, I mean, I would say you kind of hit it on the head. Like, you can't teach size.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're going to be playing the Giants here in a couple weeks, and they got guys that are just big, and that just creates a problem within itself. And I have seen him after practice, Broderick, out there continuing to work. He doesn't strike me as a guy that's going to kind of rest on his laurels if he has a good day.
Yeah.
You know, I really do think he wants to try to improve. And this is coming from a small sample size of, you know, I don't necessarily go against him, and I've only, you know, had so many, you know, double team blocks against him because I'm mostly blocking the defensive ends. But he does strike me as a guy that he has that rare size.
Yeah.
But he also seems to want to do things right.
As a vet, you got to love to see that out of a young guy.
Yeah.
Getting his reps in afterward. All right, last one. The joint practices, how much are you guys looking forward to that? Now 10 days in, kind of hitting the same guys. You mentioned going against Charles a lot. Mm-hmm. How much does the energy ramp up? How much do you guys look forward to joint practices with the New York Giants and the Jacksonville Jaguars coming up here the next couple weeks?
It's going to be good to see a new face, different styles of rushes, different styles of playing a deuce block, B block, whatever it may be, different defensive structures and looks, and just kind of test guys, I think, to see what they know cold. Because early on in camp, you know, I don't necessarily do this, but, you know, you can get the script before and look at the plays that you're going to have and, like, what do I need to do? I always like to go into practice cold and try. I need to recognize the play. I need to get up. I need to recognize the defense. I need to do it. I think it'll be a really good opportunity to see what can guys do when they have to go out there and they just have to remember things and play on the fly and read their keys and play their technique and do it against a new opponent too.
Yeah. And I know fans are going to be looking forward to seeing some of the new pieces on the offense. But look, that offensive line, and you guys, you lead the way. Everything you guys are going to do offensively is because you big guys up front. It's fun to watch you guys. I appreciate you taking the time, and I can't wait to see these joint practices in the next couple of weeks.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, man. Welcome back to the Twentyman the Huddle podcast presented by Microsoft, and I am very happy to welcome in Jim Miller, Pat Kirwan, Moving the Chains, really popular show on Sirius NFL Radio. They do a great job, great insight. So what camp is this for you guys? Making the stop in Detroit, what's number is it on the tour here?
Well, for me, I've already done Chicago, I've done New England, and the Bills, so I caught up with Pat after doing the Bears, so this is our third together.
Yeah, I skipped the Bears.
Okay. I don't think people in Detroit are going to mind that too much here, Pat.
You're going to beat them anyway.
I don't think Pat minds it either.
No.
But guys, look, you guys make these trips, and I know Jim and Pat, you guys were here last year as well.
We are many, many years now.
Yeah, and you guys are constant. But this year, does it feel a little bit different to you guys? Just with the expectations, with where this roster's at, with kind of the excitement surrounding the team, does it feel different?
I'll say this. The second I knew Dan Campbell as an assistant coach and a player. The second I saw Dan in action here the first year, I knew it was only a matter of time.
Really?
Of the way he was going to do this. And it was a radical choice, really. And the guy had a vision. I don't know that would you call it typical the way he saw he was going to run this, but I don't think it surprised me and Jim that we'd get to this point in 3 years.
Yeah, and for me, because I live locally here, I'm very in tune with the buzz about this team, and what they're trying to do and how really, Sheila Ford Hamp has gone about building this. So I've kind of seen the inner networking of it and also the perception of what fans perceive on the outside. Yeah. There is a buzz about this team, and there is an excitement level from this fan base that hasn't been here in quite a while, and I think rightfully so, because I think they're doing it the right way.
And I'm glad you mentioned Sheila, because it doesn't seem like that optimism is driven just on because the roster looks good. Like, you look at the coaching staff, you look at what Brad's done in the draft, what he's built, what he's added in free agency, and then Sheila Hamp providing everything financially and the support that they all need. It just seems like from players all the way up top to bottom, it's trending in the right direction. That gives you so much optimism.
I'll tell you where I see the trend. You always got to beat your own division.
Yeah.
So last year, not just 5-1, and I drafted Aaron Glenn. So I know who he is and how and there's another example of Dan's patience. A lot of guys would have fired Aaron in the middle of that early phase of this, and he thought better of it. But when you start winning your division like you did, and you're winning and you're scoring in the high 20s, and you're giving up in division play under 20 points, that's the foundation to success, because now you got a chance to win a division.
Yeah. Something that hasn't been done here since 1993. And look, it's the first time there's not a Hall of Fame quarterback you got to go through in Green Bay. That makes a little bit of a difference, too.
There's a lot of guys celebrating that.
There's some uncertainty there. But do you like Detroit's chances in the NFC North with what the other teams are doing? How do you think that division kind of sets up, plays out?
Well, a couple of things I'd say. There's going to be a change in Green Bay, and it's really, they ought to just admit they're in a youth movement. They haven't. Minnesota blew it, I think. They had a chance when Rodgers left to double down, get 5 or 6 guys and make a run for this, but instead they've gone the other way. And so the door's wide open, and I really expect you to win the division. Now, I came here for one big reason, to see if you were managing expectations, because everything we're talking about is expectation, higher and higher. Dan's not letting that really happen to the team.
No.
Yeah, he's keeping their head. They're focused, and like you said, they haven't accomplished anything yet. It's there for them. I definitely think it's a wide open division that they can achieve all their goals, win the division, potentially make it to the playoffs, and I think it would be another step in the right direction of what they're trying to build. And they've made a lot of moves here. Brad Holmes, people forget he conducted 8 really good drafts out there for the Rams to build them into what they were, and then comes here, makes the trade for Goff, acquires those assets, and I'll tell you what, man, he has not missed on many picks at all. This was a great draft, in my opinion, and this whole draft class will be contributors for this team, from Jack Campbell to Sam Laporta. I think Broderick Martin will get rotated in there. Branch is a great player. Yeah. I mean, who they drafted from Alabama. This is a very good secondary now that was somewhat suspect.
And that maybe leads to Jim talked about what they did in the draft. What about how they supplemented that in free agency with getting a guy like C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Cam Sutton, Emmanuel Moses, some of the other pieces, Pat?
Because, I was in this business and we had a hard team, a bad team, and trying to recruit for a bad team when multiple teams want a player is very hard, but people want to come here. Jim and I interview a lot of players, and whether it's Campbell or Goff and what's going on with the offense, it's not hard now to get guys to want to come here. Which, how long has it been since that was the case? I used to love to compete against you guys. Yeah. Oh, it's you or Detroit. Good, we're going to get you. That's not the case now.
No.
Cam Sutton made it a point that there is a buzz among players, and that's why he signed here.
Really?
Yeah. About other players in the league, this is now a destination that they want to come to.
Because of Brad and Dan? And
yeah, because of what they're building, how he coaches, his style. Yeah, he's a no-nonsense guy, but, I got coached by George Perlis at Michigan State. I would want to play for Dan Campbell. I can tell you that right now because it's the same type of style that I grew up with.
Trust him.
Yeah.
And that's the conversation players have. Can you trust this guy? And they're getting a lot of yeses.
Does it make a difference that he's been in their shoes? No, obviously there's been lots of players that have become former players that have become coaches, but it just seems like Dan's not going to ask anybody to do anything that he hasn't been asked to do himself or done himself. You know what I'm saying? Is there that kind of respect that comes with that?
When I broke in the league, it was under Bill Cowher, former player, and like Pat said, I trusted Bill Cowher. I wanted to play for Bill Cowher, and I think, and Pat's actually, talked to Bill. He's on the set with Bill Cowher.
I hooked Bill up with Dan. Really? Dan and I, Bill and I are very close. Yeah. We play a lot of golf together. We're together every Sunday. And the day I met Dan, we were on the set with him. And at the end of it, I said, give me your cell phone number. You are going to get to know Cowher. And I called Cowher, and those guys converse a lot now.
What are your impressions of Dan? What kind of guy? Because you said when you first, you knew that this was going to get to this point. Why'd you have that feeling, Pat?
Because I think he knows the kind of players you need. And he wasn't afraid to get rid of players, even guys with big names, out of here because you're not really going to be the Lion the way we want a Lion to be. So he was bold in those things, and he didn't make many mistakes. He also is, this is the part I don't think the fans understand, how patient he is. Like, he looks like he's impulsive, and he got rid of your defensive backs, etc.
You're going for it on fourth down a lot and all this stuff.
And they were ready to criticize him and run him out of town, and the things he said in his press conference. So, the East Coast mentality where I come from, they thought, who's this guy, But when I really study how he handles his roster, like, he has a 3-year plan for every player. Yeah. Now, you can blow that up yourself if you want, but he's willing to stick with you, just like he stuck with Aaron, for 3 years. And that's when he thinks if you don't deliver by 3, that's a long time. Most young head coaches like him get fired in 3 years. Yeah. When you hire a guy that's never had any experience, many of these owners are going to fire him in 3 years. Right. They're just playing Russian roulette with the guy. But this guy doesn't understand how to get players ready. He challenges them in their meetings. I know he does, and I know the things he says. So I think you got the ingredients now. Then you got to deliver in the games, and I think he got the quarterback. Remember when no one wanted Goff? Yeah. I don't hear any of that anymore on the radio.
29 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Why he hasn't thrown an interception? 324
passes.
Nobody was playing better down the stretch at the position than Jared Goff. The last 10 games of the year, he was incredible how he played. Just efficient, getting rid of the ball, his processing the information, not getting sacked. All those things matter. And he's a better player. And both Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell, they believe he is better now than what he was when he finished the year.
He'll be this. He says too. He feels better about just the situation that he's in, and he thinks he's playing better ball than he was when he was playing at his height in LA too. And he was playing some pretty good football.
He threw 300 times without a pick. He knows where to go with the ball. He has people that can catch it. Now he has a young tight end. We talked to him this morning about it, that he's nurturing. He knows the middle of the field is going to be open.
Yeah. And Jim, you played quarterback in this league. How important do you think it was for Ben Johnson when he got the job last offseason to bring Jared in and say, look, it's not Ben Johnson's offense. This is what we're going to do. It's Jared, let's build this thing together. What do you like to do? Yeah. I mean, obviously Ben's got his own concepts and things he wants to do, but I think allowing him to be a big part of it, does that play into some of that success we're seeing too?
Any coach worth his salt, you need to curtail the offense to the strengths of the player. These guys that come in and just say, hey, this is my system, this is how I want it run, it's just bad because there's going to be bad fits. in terms of players. And so you have to adapt, you have to adjust, you got to curtail your play calling to the strengths of the player and then minimize the things he doesn't do well. I think we all know Jared isn't a guy where you're going to move him around a lot, but like that chili roll game that they do, the half roll, that sets up perfectly for his game, for his play action stuff and what they want to do. And he can process information as good as anybody and get the ball out of his hand.
And by the way, the NFC, Rodgers goes to the AFC, Russell Wilson goes to the AFC. Mm-hmm. When you look around, Jim and I get on the radio and we go, make a case against Goff.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Jalen Hurts is in that conversation, and then...
Yeah, you got Dak. You got very few guys in the NFC. Jared Goff's
right there.
Right there. There's no question.
And the offense, I've been to a couple of camps now. The offense here, unlike some of the other camps I was at, is way ahead of the other offenses I saw.
And that's great that they get Ben Johnson back too. Obviously, he flirted with some head coaching gigs. I think that's going to be in his future. But credit to him too to come back here. Yeah, I had him on the podcast right after he decided to do it. And he said, "Look, I've got some unfinished business, and I'm not ready yet." Credit to him, right? To say, hey, I got a good thing going right here. I kind of want to keep this going. I want to learn some more before and be more prepared before I step into that role.
I've helped a lot of guys get head coaching jobs. I always tell them, do not take a bad job because you're not going to get a second chance. Be patient. Keep building your resume, and a better job will come along. And you might have that happen here, in a year or so. So, yeah, it's fun. Look, we've been here and done things like this for this organization multiple times, and sometimes we had to kind of wing it like, well, good luck, not now. No. This is a real deal.
We talked about the offense a little bit. Could you imagine playing behind this offensive line?
They're tremendous.
I mean, isn't that kind of the catalyst of what everything on the field is going to be? Is obviously it starts up front on both sides of the ball, but offensively, especially when you talk about this team, I think everything first and foremost is, man, that offensive line is really, really good.
Yeah, there's we do our position rankings every year. The Lions are in the top 5 for their offensive line. Probably Philly was there. Dallas is a good offensive line, but Detroit is right there in terms for pound, and they added to it. And again, think about guys who were once here, left, and wanted to come back, and that'd be Graham Glasgow, and they got even more depth now, in my opinion. Hopefully a healthy Vitae, but Penei Sewell was a great pick. Obviously Decker. Ragnow's probably the strongest center in the league by far.
And Jonas Jackson was a Pro Bowl a couple years ago too, so it's just right across that line, just veteran guys.
And I knowing Dan enough, hey, Dan's going to say, we had that same line last year, and we had the same line the year before, so it's got to be more than that. Yeah. The defense, I'm still, look, we throwing a lot of flowers out here, but they still need to get better in the defensive line.
100%.
And they should be searching for that. And they might have a player or two to give if they can get their hands on one. They're hard to find, but your typical chance of getting one is contractual reasons, not talent reasons. So someone who can't afford to sign, that's the kind of guy that you should go after. And I think they have their eyes open and looking for stuff.
Yeah. And, I think they've got some guys coming back that played a lot in rookie. Obviously, Aiden Hutchins, some of those guys that they're thinking.
I like the outside guys.
Are going to develop, Broderick Martin, maybe a young guy that can do something. Levi Onwuzurike, who they didn't have last year, could maybe give them a little something inside.
I said to Jimmy this morning, when you miss on a defensive tackle for medical reasons or talent reasons, if you miss on that, we all know if you miss on a quarterback, it's 5 years before you're better again. Yeah. When you miss on a defensive tackle that you're counting on to be a star, it could be 3 years before you get to in a position in the draft to get the next really, really good one. So hopefully he comes around. But I don't think they should just sit around.
No, and I don't think Brad will. Because they know. I mean, you look at last year, right? It was almost a tale of 2 seasons. First 7 games of the year, they're 1-6. They're allowing 32 points per game. You look at the last 10, that number drops down to a little bit over 20. That's 11th best in the NFL. And with how good this offense is, you saw the result, right? Yeah. I think if this defense is just marginally better, we're talking about in the teens somewhere.
They're going to be better.
This football team is going to be so much better. Would you guys agree?
Absolutely. I didn't understand the criticism you guys were getting for drafting the middle linebacker. We love that guy. Jim and I interviewed just about every guy that was going to be a first, second, or third round pick. He was by far the smartest football player we talked to. He'll have no problem running this defense, managing it, coordinating it. And in the meantime, all the guys who had to play last year that are going to be backups now are full-blown starters. Yeah. You got guys all over the place that can play linebacker, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, Rodriguez, and I thought he was a pleasant surprise last year. So yeah, I think especially the secondary. The secondary's night and day better than what it was. 100%. Yeah, so they've got some players now, and they'll be just fine.
And you'll get Jameson back someday. I saw him today. Every time he catches an out route or goes past the I like that.
That speed's different.
Oh, he's different.
It's different.
And he's a game changer. And good things are coming. And then we wrapped it up with Coach today going, after all the things we just said, you get to turn around and see Hendon Hooker working out by himself out there. Yeah. What a great idea to draft that guy.
100%. It seems like a terrific guy doing everything the right way. The arm strength, you saw how he played. I think that injury, he wouldn't have been there for them had he not suffered that injury. And I think that's one that they're going to benefit from.
And you don't need him right away.
No.
It was the perfect place for him to come to.
We've already talked. Yeah, and it was full funny. I talked to him at the Senior Bowl, actually. I ran into because he went down there, even though he couldn't do it, but just wanted to be part of the meetings and be like, kudos to that young man, right? And I asked him, what would you like going to a place like Detroit where you could learn behind a guy, or do you want to play right away? He said, I get to learn behind a guy like Jared Goff, a guy who's done it at a high level in this league for a long time. Sign me up. I'll do that. You know how much better I'm going to get? And that was his approach and his mentality, which you've got to love that in a young player.
It's a good problem to have, because I think a lot of people thought that maybe Jared Goff was just going to be a bridge quarterback. I don't know if you can look at him like that anymore. I really don't. No. And this young man.
Ben will take him with him when he gets his job.
Yeah.
Here's the one thing I'd say to the fans that listen to this. I've seen a number of teams have this big emotional momentum. Mm-hmm. It happened to Houston the first time they were going to be good. And I'll never forget talking to them. They lost their opener to the Jets. And the fans immediately want to revert back to, here we go again. They still didn't believe. You could have a rough start. You could lose your opener. Yeah. But it's a challenge for all this excitement, and Jimmy sees it at all the stores in town. You got to be ready for the 17 games. Not, the opener, because I've seen exactly what happens. The Jets, it happened. The New York Post had the back page, said the greening of New York, because they thought we were going to be great. We lost the first two games. They turned on us so fast.
And Kansas City, first game of the year at Kansas City, home against Seattle. So to your point, two very tough matchups, but it's a long season, 17 games.
I just hope that they're really fans.
All right, I want to finish with this, guys. The most interesting part about your visit here, was it somebody you talked to? Is it maybe something you got inside information on that you just are excited about, or just something from the outside looking in? What's one really interesting thing about this visit here?
I told Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes as well. There's a lot of coaching, because this is such a staff that has played the position, like Mark Brunell. I mean, you bring in John Fox as a coach, and Aaron Glenn has played. There's a lot of coaching that's going on in between each and every play. I've been on teams personally, and we see it on the camp tour where nothing is brought up. You wait till after the practice and you coach up via the tape. Reviewing, hey, this. But no, like today, it was the young Stephen Gilmore, the young defensive back, and it was a play, offense, defense, right away. Aaron Glenn's jumping in, he goes, son, come here. He's giving him coaching pointers right there. Hey, you can't do that versus this. Here's why. You understand. They're getting instant correction right away, when some staffs don't do that.
They wait until the film afterward.
So I think it shows, because the young guys you played last year, look at how they have grown and developed, and I think a lot of it is because of that the attention to detail and the instant care is there right away to develop these young players.
For me, it was Alim McNeill. I'll tell you why, because we knew another team, they had a war in their draft room. One guy wanted him, the other guy didn't. They passed on him. So we've kind of stayed on top of them. So I lived in a world where every team I was with and every coach I was with was 4-3 front. And that guy would have been a steal as a 3 technique. And now you're playing him down.
Now he's down.
He's lighter and all that stuff. And he just is a big piece. And if you can get stout at the 1 technique, because you kind of play the shaded nose, it's not really a 3-4. It's just tilted. It's way what's his name ran the same defense. It's really it's not a 1-gap defense all the time, but now he's penetrating. that guy's going to wreak havoc in the backfield, and he's going to let you be able to play without the extra guy in the box. And that's important. That's how Warren Sapp was. They played a lot of two behind it. Why? Because Sappy he'd spike all the time, and the center and the guard would have to take him, so you didn't need the extra guy. And that's what's going to happen with McNeill. So when I saw him today, as fast as he is off the ball.
Good day to come. You had a couple plays in practice today where
and he's lost weight. He admitted he's lost 24 pounds.
I wouldn't say it to him because it's not my place, but he made money today.
Yeah, and the funny thing is I've stopped both Frank Ragnow and Jonah Jackson after, seeing Alim and the weight being lost. I said, did he lose any strength, losing 22 pounds?
No.
Heck no, he didn't.
No.
He said, nope, lost zero strength. He's
That's
just
a linchpin
quicker.
to your defense.
Yeah, 100%.
And it's really important when you want to structure your secondary that you have a guy that they're scared to death of inside. Yeah. You got the outside guy, and you'll just slide the protection. But to have a guy in there now, pretty good deal for you.
Well, that's exciting to hear. It's exciting that you guys were here to get your perspective. Jim Miller, Pat Kirwan, you guys do a great job moving the chains on NFL's Sirius NFL Radio. It's a must listen to for you guys out there. Thank you guys for joining me. I appreciate
Well,
your
thanks for having us.
insight.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, thank you guys. Welcome back to the Twentyman in the Huddle podcast presented by Microsoft. I am very happy to welcome in Ben Solak from The Ringer. Ben, you do a terrific job with The Ringer. I want to start with, let's go this right away. You're a Philly fan, grew up a Philly fan. So let me ask you about CJ Gardner-Johnson. Obviously a guy who Brad Holmes identified as a guy who could be a huge piece to this defense, a versatile guy. You look at Philly last year, played 400 snaps at safety, 200 at nickel, 200 in the box, a guy you can move all over. How big of a signing was that for Detroit, and just what kind of player is Detroit getting in CJ Gardner-Johnson?
Yeah, a really talented player. And the versatility is what makes him so valuable, right? Like when I first got here to camp, I was like, okay, so Chauncey's one of the starting safeties. Who's the other one, Kirby or Tracy? And you were like, no. Chauncey's playing the slot. And I was like, okay, well, when he was in Philly, he was primarily the deep safety. And the whole point of him leaving New Orleans was he wanted to be the deep safety. Now he's here in Detroit and he can play the slot for them. But then in different packages, you can put him back and play safety. And you bring Brian Branch onto the field and it just snowballs and it snowballs and it snowballs, right? There's so many defensive packages you can play that other teams can't because they don't have a Chauncey. And when you play as much man coverage as Aaron Glenn does, asking your safety to come down in the box. Some defenses ask that safety to be really good against the run. Other defenses, like Glenn's, need him to be able to cover slot receivers. And that's literally what Chauncey was doing for like 4 years in New Orleans. You can't find a better safety who can play over the slot than you can in Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. So it's a great fit. He's a very valuable player. He's a vocal player. He's a leader in the sense that he's a tone setter, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like he will be no nonsense. He will be aggressive. If the defense is not playing well, he will make it a point and outline that, which is a good thing to have when you still got some youth there in the defense as well. And so Chauncey's a very valuable piece to a defense that hopes to continue to be more and more versatile in the back end.
And a defense that hopes to get more hands on footballs, have a little bit more ball skills. Yep. So you look at a guy like that, right? 6 interceptions, tied for the NFL lead in only 12 games. We saw it with Kirby Joseph, right? Cam Sutton has that ability too. So it's guys that have been brought in to kind of get hands-on footballs, be those ball hawks, turn the football over. That's been the big emphasis here with what Brad's done in the secondary. But Ben, when you're good in the secondary, just how does that translate to all of your defense?
Yeah, I mean, it allows Glenn to do that, which he's wanted to do and what he's tried to do and what he's done in his first couple years here, which is play a ton of man coverage and line up and beat you for 4 quarters. That they had indeterminate success with that, right? They had lulls and they have swells over the last couple of years. Obviously, 2 seasons ago, the secondary was unbelievably young. The entire defense was extremely young. Last year, they started to figure stuff out, and they have good stretches and bad stretches, like I said. But you end up in a point where you look at like Jeff Okudah and Amani Oruwariye, and you say, okay, we want to make an improvement in this defensive backfield if we're really going to be a team that just lines up and beats you in man coverage for 4 quarters. So you go get Sutton, you get Mosley, Mosley's great when he's healthy, right? You have Jerry Jacobs already in the building. And then Chauncey's kind of that kicker, right? Where you weren't necessarily planning on getting that done, but all of a sudden he's available. The market isn't what you thought it would be, and he's there on a 1-year deal. Brian Branch falls to you in the 40s. You didn't necessarily think he'd be available. And he starts going, all right, well, if we're going to do this thing, let's do the thing, And so what you see, like the Lions were first in the last year in cover 1 rate. They were third in the league overall in man coverage rate. This team wants to just line up and play with their defensive backs and be able to match a variety of body types and a variety of receiver skills. And they're better equipped now to do that than they ever have been in Aaron Glenn's tenure, and that's what they're hoping for.
And just as I do, that when you talk about pass defense in the NFL, it's a marriage between rush and cover, right?
Yep.
And the cover part was the issue. I think you look at some of the guys they've got up front, what they can do lining up on the edges with Aiden Hutchinson, with Charles Harris. We saw what James Houston did at the end of last year. They're excited about Josh Pascal. John Kaminsky can do a lot of things inside, outside. It looks like they've got the depth and the guys up front, especially on the edge, to be able to, get after the quarterback, make things uncomfortable. It was always just kind of in the back end. They didn't have those guys that could cover just long enough. Now it seems like they've got that marriage much closer now, don't they, Ben?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, what you still worry about is you worry about the interior of the defensive line. You worry about the linebacking core because they were losing to the running game, especially running game like on 1st and 10, running game from passing looks. They lost to gun run a lot last year. And it's because you start to pour all these resources, and appropriately so, into the pass rusher spot, right? You spend the second rounder on Pascal, the first rounder on Hutchinson. You pay the money to keep Kaminsky here. You spend all that capital in the secondary, and you go and you get Cam Sutton and Mosley and Gardner-Johnson and Brian Branch. And you're looking there now at Jack Campbell and Alim McNeill, and a third-round pick out of Western Kentucky, Broderick Martin. Yeah. And you're saying, all right, like, we really need these guys to solve this problem for us, right? This is all we've got here in the interior. We have a lot of redundancy and a lot of depth at edge rusher, a lot of redundancy and depth in the defensive backfield. That's what you want it to be. Now that core becomes really, really important, right? That's not the sexy jobs, not the fun jobs, not the stat sheet stuffing jobs.
Yeah.
They're the jobs that get you to that 3rd and 7 where that pass rush and that coverage can shine as well. So you're looking at that core as an important part of this defense.
I had Pat Kirwan and Jim Miller on before you, and Pat, one of the things he's excited about was Alim McNeill. How he's lost 22 pounds, how he looked quick. I stood next to you at practice a little bit, and we watched that a little bit. Alim looks a little bit different. I mean, I've seen him obviously every practice, every game he's been here, but you can really tell the 22 pounds and the body fat that he dropped.
For me, I would say he looks dramatically different, right? For you, it's like the gradual thing. For me, I saw him and I was like, that's not the same player that was at NC State. And that's a guy going from, I'm going to play over the center, I'm going to play in the A-gap, to now I'm going to be a permanent B-gap player, right? And I'm going to add stuff as a pass rusher and add stuff as a penetrator, which he's had such delightful flashes. Everybody knows the giant game and the 10 pressure game, right? It's there.
Yeah.
You can taste it, you can feel it. And so kudos to him for an extremely fast body recomposition and kind of a commitment to that role. Yeah, I've always loved Lee McNeill since he was with the Wolfpack. He's a good prospect.
But to your point, need a guy like him. Need a guy like Levi Onwuzurike, a second-round pick from a few years ago who obviously battled injuries. You need that guy to step up front, be that guy next to Alim, and then obviously need to hit on Jack. And Jack's got to be a player here. All right, Ben, let's go to the other side of the ball a little bit. I know, one of the reasons why you're in town here, want to get with Jared Goff, do something for the ringer there. Impressions of Goff in the year he had last year. How impressive was that? Because obviously it's a tough situation that he had 2 years ago. Moved here, joining a team that, was young and not very good. Now, let's be honest. And to evolve what he did from 2021 to 2002, I think he deserves a lot of credit for that. And just the what you thought of that season last year.
Brad Holmes, whenever he talks about Goff, he makes the point where like when we drafted Goff at Cal, he was really young. And we saw that he had a lot of development to do and he had a lot of upside. And then, 4 or 5 years later, stuff with Sean McVay is fracturing. He's available in the trade market. And Holmes is the GM of the Lions. And he looks at Goff and he goes, well, he's still actually really young for a guy who's been in the league for 5 years. He still has a lot of development and upside. Like the same thing that I saw when he was there at Cal, I still see now where he can continue to get better. So they go and they acquire him in the trade for Matthew Stafford. And the headline of that trade is Stafford goes to the Rams, and the Rams tossed Goff in as salary cap filler. But in reality, Goff has now had the starting job for multiple years and has gotten better for multiple years. He's got an OC who knows where his bread is buttered, and Ben Johnson does a great job setting up the offense where Goff is strong. And you had from Goff last year his emphatic best season since the 2017 season. He played better than I think he did in 2018 when they made the Super Bowl run, and certainly than he did since then. This is not just like one of the best versions of Goff that we've seen over the course of his career, but it also feels like a much more stable version, a much more certain version, right? When you had 2016 Jeff Fisher, horrible rookie season, to then this 2017-2018 explosion, you figure the truth is somewhere in the middle and you kind of vacillate and settle. And now it feels like he's actually picking up, but he's mature, he's growing. You see this with a lot of the veteran quarterbacks in this system, right? Like Jimmy Garoppolo and Kirk Cousins, like guys who, in their first few years starting, you're watching their prolific success in these offenses and going, is this them? Is this the coaching staff? Is this the play calling? Is this the system? But eventually you just taken so many snaps in the NFL, you have so much experience that you know what it looks like. You've seen it all. You've seen the blitzes and you see the changes and you know what you can get to and what you can't get to. And you develop this veteran ability to just manage the offense. And I think that's where we're seeing Jared Goff right now.
You know, when I look at Jared Goff in last season, the thing that impresses me the most is the 324 straight passes without an interception. But it's not just the 324, Ben. It's doing it while having the number 4 passing offense. Mm-hmm. You know, the number 4 overall offense, number 5 in points, and number 8 in passing. So it's not like you're dinking and dunking and you're doing this and you're not making plays down the field. He's just really at a spot where I think he understands that if he doesn't turn the football over, he's got the weapons now. He's in a great scheme that fits him. He's one of the best play action passers in the league. This is a play action offense that it just seems like he's in a good spot.
Yeah, and the big part of the turnovers, right, is like, okay, avoid interceptions. The other drive killers are fumbles and sacks. And Goff is always been a mobile quarterback, so always stayed in the pocket. And the concern with him coming out of Cal, right, was the small hands. He would have been holding the football. Behind this offensive line, you're not going to have as many sacks and fumble problems as you would otherwise, right?
No.
Like, you got the boys. You're going to be protected pretty well. And so if you do your job on interceptions, they're going to handle your job over there, and all of a sudden it's clean pockets. And Goff's always been great making throws under pressure and taking a hit. So when things get muddy, he'll hang in there and he'll throw the ball. But you don't really have to worry too much about I got to run around, I got to deal with pressure, and I got to deal with hits. Like he has such good pass protection, and the play action helps as well up front, that handle your business on the interceptions and understand, like, this offense can just work for you. It can plug, it can chug. And the final piece of that puzzle is you don't need to get 10 yards and 3 downs. You need to get 10 and 4. And that's the benefit of having that aggressive coach. Is you get to 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, you go, I really got to hang in the pocket. I got to let this route develop deep down the field. And then you remember, Dan Campbell's going to go for him 4th and 2. So I can dump this thing off short of the 6 right now. And if I just get a positive play, they're going to give me another opportunity to go get this. And so holistically now, the Lions have a great infrastructure, offensive line and play caller and aggressive head coach to let Goff chill, not feel like he has to push, not feel like he has to attack tight windows, facilitate the offense, which worked great. Like, it sounds not sexy, right? It sounds like, they're protecting him. That's a top 5 passing offense.
Right.
Like, they worked just fine.
What about Ben Johnson and that fit for Jared? It seems like it's a perfect fit. And we talked about this with Jim and Pat a little bit too, but just, for Ben to bring, Jared in when building this offense, it wasn't, here's my offense, learn it. It was, let's do this together. It seems that that's really benefited Jared too. And I think that's helped him settle in maybe quicker than some quarterbacks learning a new offense, going to their second year with an offense. It seems like this offense and the way Ben communicates got him involved. Just the way he calls a game just seems to really benefit Jared. And he's almost a perfect fit for it.
Yeah, and it wasn't even that Ben brought Jared into his offense and said, okay, what works for you? Ben got the job when Jared was already here, right? Like Ben came up from tight ends coach, if memory serves. Yeah. And so he sits down with Jared and goes, okay, what'd you like? Let's figure this thing out. Ben Johnson is such a impressive coach and also a challenging coach for somebody like me to talk about, because usually I do he came from this coaching tree and they run this stuff and this is where you see he kind of adjusted and changed it. And Ben not came out of nowhere. I mean, a little bit came out of nowhere. And he just steals stuff, right? Like they run a lot of like traditional McVay stuff and stuff that Goff saw from the Rams. But Ben was never on that staff, right? No. He's just yanking it from over there, saying, "Okay, this works."
Gase stuff a lot. Right. There's some concepts in there.
And now, they're bringing Jahmyr Gibbs in, and we're gonna line up Gibbs as a running back, as a wide receiver, 10%, 15%, 20%, whatever percent ends up being of all our snaps. And again, you go look at Ben Johnson and this offensive coaching staff, and you go, okay, who came up with this? Like, who's doing this? Like, who was on the Christian McCaffrey staff? Who was on the, Austin Eckler staff? Who's got a background in this? And the answer is not really anybody. They're just, okay, this is something that works across the league, and we have a guy who can do it, so let's go steal some stuff from some other places and put it together. And that, a lot of guys wish they could do that. Few guys can pull it off, right? It's a lot harder than it seems to graft stuff from different trees and build into cohesive offense. So kudos to Ben Johnson. That's why he was a hot commodity on the coaching market, and that's why he deserves that attention, is because not a lot of guys can pull off what he's pulled off here in a very quick period of time in Detroit.
So what are you most excited about? We'll finish with that. Just heading into this season, when you think about the Detroit Lions, what maybe excites you? What maybe concerns you? What's maybe that kind of thing that you go to when you're thinking about the Detroit Lions heading into 2023?
Yeah. I love watching teams grow into contenders. I think it's really cool. I like to think about what the Lions could potentially be doing at the trade deadline if they have a good record and they're looking to kind of, jump this thing up to the next level. I was joking with PJ, who works with you, he's off screen, about beating the Chiefs in week 1, and kind of having a statement game. But like the Lions didn't make the playoffs last season. They didn't finish the job, but it feels like a different team. It feels like a growing team. It feels like an emerging team into a contender. So that's extremely exciting. So it's just cool to watch. There's a other side to that coin, which is that brings new pressure, that brings new expectations, that brings new urgency, right? It's awesome to sit down, to bring in our guys and to build it up, right? And to do it with our culture in the Dan Campbell way, right? Cam Sutton's not like known in the league as a star, but he's a good corner. He's a great culture guy, and he's nice and tough, right? Amon-Ra St. Brown was not known to be a star, but 4th round pick he was, and he's earned his stripes. You know, there's a lot of we build it up here, right? We get like, you know, not necessarily the S tier stars, but some guys like, you know, good to great players, and we have a culture here, we have a connection here, and that grows. That's great. And that's really nice and easy when just like the vibes are good. Mm-hmm. But once the expectations get really high and the pressure dials on, that's where you like to have stars that you can lean on. That's when you like to have guys who have been there before, not be a young team, but be an older team. And that's the difficult and challenging metamorphosis, but still the necessary and exciting metamorphosis the Lions have to undergo.
And every good team has to go through that, right? It's that old saying of, you know, you've got to almost lose before you can win. But you got to get to that point, get close, then lose, then you can get over the edge. It should be really fun to watch. And I love having you on because we can talk about anything. I can ask you anything and you can just roll. Yeah. He has been so.
There's a kicker battle going on. I was watching him try
the kicker battle is tight. It's tight. We can go into that too. We can sit here for a half hour and talk stuff. But no, I appreciate it. You become a friend of the show. You're a good guest to have. I love having you on.
Thank you.
Welcome to Alim Park here for the next few days. He has been Solak from the Ringer.